25 reading of Topsail Beach Ag order. And first thing on is the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So is there any agenda? Hearing none, that's okay. Approval of the minutes from the April meeting. Questions or additions? So I guess I need a motion to approve. Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, does anybody have a conflict of interest today? Yeah. No? Okay. And public comments? It's like that large public crowd, so. They're amazingly quiet. I know, it's amazing. So, next item, number 6. We're pleased to have Mr. Pilot here to walk us through. So are we actually going to get this puppy put to bed this year?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe so. Ultimately, that's up to the town. Thank you for having me. We met a couple months back and had some brief discussion about this. In fact, over the past year and a half, this has been brought up on and off. But all of the land use plan discussion was halted until disposition of the south end property. That has all happened now. And so it is being brought back to you all to render your recommendation to send it to the commissioners for a second time. I'll add just a couple things if I may, and then Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you guys for questions. One, I am also no longer with the Council of Governments. I'm with a separate firm now, our own firm, Anchor Point Planning, providing very similar line of services. And towns agreed to come on to allow me to assist you all throughout this process. Council of Governments has also been very open to allowing me to continue with that arrangement. So, just want to mention that. In terms of the land use plan specifically, way back in 2022, this was recommended by this board to the commissioners for approval at the time. And then it's sold. So procedurally for you all, in order for this to bring this forward, what town staff is recommending and we'll discuss with you all is one, another formal recommendation when you're ready, so that it can then be sent to Division of Coastal Management again to reinitiate the 75-day review period to ensure that the document meets all the requirements necessary for it to be approved for camera purposes. From there, ultimately, there'll be a hearing before the commissioners, and the commissioners will choose whether or not they want to adopt the plan, revise the plan, etc. That's the standard procedure in terms of how this would be adopted. I know it is now out of date, which is, kind of outside of our control. We're anticipating having an issue come up that kind of forced this thing to be halted. So, with that said, I will turn it over to you all for questions, comments, kind of next steps.
Did I see something that there was supposed to be a draft of a certain part of this that we were supposed to review?
They just, basically they just sent it back because of the Calvin project, and there could have been a conflict if it was developed.
So as it stands now, is there any changes or additions that we need to focus on, or can we just say we'll send it up as it stands right now.
Yeah, that would be in your purview. And then certainly, for example, if you were to do that, we'll put together a memo for the commissioners, explain the series of events that have transpired to get the document to where it is now. If, for example, the commissioners say, hey, can you look at X, Y, or Z? Maybe they want to send it back to the planning board. But all intents and purposes, it will be their document to finalize, review, and adopt.
Well, let me ask you this, Wes, because you probably know this inside and out better than any of us next to the passenger. Is there anything in there that we should focus on before we take it to a vote for the planning board?
That's a sort of a trick question. I would say that.
It was just a loaded.
Sure, it was a loaded question. So your board, while it may not be the same membership as it was at the time, focused on all those appropriate elements, future land use map, et cetera, policies, all went through that in detail and found it to be in line with their expectations. And that's why they recommended it. So it's kind of a formality for it to be brought back here, but we wanted to make sure that you guys were offered the opportunity. If there is additional questions about the current document that you have.
Well, you have seniority here, sir. Is there anything that could we run into any problem with the date of our statistics?
Should not run into any problems. I think that is perhaps that we should, if this board would like, one, we can update the date on the cover to be 2025 at least, would make sense. But secondarily, I think that we could put some notation in there that addresses, the reason at which the demographic figures are dated the way that they are is largely as a result of something that's outside of our control, but it would not impact, the legality of the document, for example.
So I was, my fear would be Kim raises a red flag and goes, wait a minute.
And if they do, then that will be, my responsibility. Obviously, we'll bring that back to you all and say, Kama says the information in here needs to be updated or what have you. I don't anticipate that being an issue, but if it were, then we would be required to address it prior to adoption.
No, that 70-day review period you talked about, that was the commissioners, 70 days, not us, correct?
The 75-day review period is Division of Coastal Management and CAMA. That's an interagency review. If there's other agencies that want to comment on the document, I've not found that to be the case in my experience preparing these plans. The other thing that they do is they ensure that it meets all of the North Carolina Administrative Code 7B requirements for this to be certified as a land use plan. That's the other part of the review period. They'll send me back an email, Wes, the plan looks good. It is meets the requirements and you may proceed through to local adoption.
So if I have questions of Wes.
I have a comment. I don't know, I wasn't around when all this was started, but in the booklet that I received when I started the draft, the same year, but it ends at section 321. But the document that was sent to us is considerably longer. Looks like when we go to the sections, section 4, section.
No, you're right. There is a 4, a 5,
Yeah.
and a 6, and an
Yeah.
appendix.
So
Perhaps I'm not sure which hard copy you have there.
draft 11/15/2022.
It may be that you, for whatever reason, you didn't have the entirety of it printed, but the whole document is what Randy alluded to. It is 6 chapters with an appendix.
Plus the appendix.
Yes. We can make sure that you get all the.
I'm fine.
Okay.
I just was, because I read over
Yes,
this
yeah.
and I'm familiar with this, but I'm not as familiar with all that.
I understand.
So let me ask you then, so since we've had the gentleman with the, instead of the first line of vegetation, we revamped it, all that along the coastline for construction start points.
Mhm.
Is that addressed in here or should it be addressed or not?
This, Mars, I don't think it happened after this.
I know, that's why I was wondering if it should be incorporated in this to,
And that typically first, that would be a minor permit. In most cases, unless there was, an odd circumstance that would require a major permit on the ocean front. But for the most part, things like that are not, addressed in a policy document like that. That's more of a current planning type matter. And if there was additional requirements, related to first line, those would probably be an ordinance modification.
so that's, we don't have to be concerned about.
This situation.
That's a permitting situation versus a planning, long-range planning policy type. But that's a good question.
Well, I hate to read this through, but I know everybody's probably tired of looking at this. So, does anyone else have a question, or do you want to run it up and if I ask for a motion, if you want? Or should the city head of the city department over there, anything, Doug, that you would recommend in this or not?
It's been sitting for a couple of years now, so.
This will be our second formal recommendation from the planning board, which that might be a record for me.
So when does this information become obsolete? It looks like much of this was done, let's say during COVID, which to me, there's a whole different mindset than where we are today.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering how that doesn't affect, I'm sure, rules and regulations that have to do with CAM and things of that nature. But I remember the mayor saying that this was a plan, it wasn't law, just a plan. And I wonder if this plan is in line with 2025 vision. And I'm not saying to start it over. No. But you know what I'm saying? The priorities in 2019 might not be the same.
Yeah.
How is that?
Sure. You're exactly correct. I'm unsure, if we were to, roll out the survey once again, hold public input once again. I don't know, the difference between the feedback we got then and the feedback we got now. I would speculate that a lot of it would be similar, but I'm certain that there would be some differences. And so, ultimately, as you alluded to, it's almost like you got to go back and start fresh if in fact that was the perspective of the town. For now, though, I think the town's perspective is just finishing what we initially agreed to, but I'll let Doug weigh in here.
I think another factor that you have to put in play is here, we just approved a budget last week and this was not included in that to redo this plan. So that's something that you also have to factor in. And it's a very lean budget, as I'm sure all of you know. So just something to keep in mind in that discussion.
And so I'm sorry, Sue, that I don't have a good answer for you. And I think it's a fair thought, we're just sort of, this was outside of our control to have to put a stop to this. Normally it would not, this thing would have gone through and been adopted
Well, that's kind of
Yeah.
the way I was looking at, it, see what the board says, but we put it on hold. Not saying that there was changes required, but until the south end was done. And then once that was solidified, move forward and pass this on as it stood at that time, is the way I had pictured it.
Yeah.
Moving on.
That's exactly what happened.
Okay. So I guess at this point, if there's no other comments or questions of everybody, would entertain a motion to pass this to the town commissioners.
Is there any reason why we shouldn't?
No, because this is exactly the way it stood before the issue of the south end. At that point, we agreed to place it on hold, no changes. Against law, I certainly think that if the commissioners want to make some changes, they can. They're,
I got you.
so.
Okay.
Unless anybody else sees other reason why we should not do it. So I'll call for a motion to pass this on to the board of commissioners.
To make a motion that we do the general updating date-wise and personnel-wise, and then pass our existing land use plan draft dated 2022, soon to be 2025, up to the town board for their consideration.
Second. We have a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So we pass it up. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. We will put together a memo, update this document in accordance with the motion, and it will get in the queue for the commissioners at one of their upcoming meetings. And we'll go from there.
We'll get a copy of that prior to going to the commissioners with the update.
Sure, we'll make sure that the digital copy that's dispersed to the commissioners is also provided to you all. And I suspect also, at the discretion of the commissioners, this will ultimately be put on the town's website.
It takes care of item number 6, so that we're moving on. 7, staff comments. It's gonna be a nice short meeting. So, board comments, anybody over there? None? No?
I make a motion we adjourn.
I think I heard a second, so all in favor? Good.
Thank you all. You guys can get back to your shop.